Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts are all huge winners now that Kirk Cousins is in Atlanta. We will explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $200 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. Kate, it is legal tampering day, and the moves have been coming in like crazy. We've got a bunch of winners. We've got to start, though, with Kirk Cousins going into the Atlanta Falcons. Who do you believe this benefits the most in Atlanta?
It's absolutely, unequivocally, I think Drake London. And let's be honest, it also applies to Kyle Pitts here, who has struggled with accurate pass attempts from his quarterback. But I mean, both Drake London and Kyle Pitts, huge winners here. I mean, Marcus, despite the fact that Kirk Cousins missed a significant chunk of 2023 with that Achilles injury, over the past 3 seasons, Kirk Cousins ranks 9th in the league in total passing yards, 6th in total passing touchdowns. Explosive playmaker, 4.4% big time throw rate per PFF. He is a solid NFL quarterback. I don't know what to tell you. And now he's going to get a really, I think, talented group of playmakers. So while I've said it before, I do think that generally speaking, this group of playmakers in particular, a slight downgrade over what he had in Minnesota, because let's be real, throwing to TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison, that pretty hard to top. But this is about as good as you could ask for if he's not going to be there with the Minnesota Vikings. And for as efficient as a passer as he is, even coming off that Achilles injury, Marcus, his game is not built on mobility. So you need him to be able to stand upright. You need him to be mobile enough to navigate the pocket. But I think all in all, Atlanta Falcons fantasy managers have to be supremely overjoyous.
Yeah, I think all of the skill positions players are winners, right? I think Bijan Robinson, he was already my RB1 in Dynasty. I've said that for the last few weeks. He obviously doesn't move here. Drake London goes way up. We've been speculating for a while that we thought Drake London was going to be a winner because whoever they got at quarterback was going to be an upgrade over Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder. Plus, you get the upgrade of Zach Robinson calling the plays now. That's a huge, huge reason why we love Drake London. And now Kyle Pitts finally has a quarterback that's going to throw him the ball over the middle of the field. So all of these guys are huge winners. As for Kirk Cousins' dynasty value, I think it remains mostly unchanged. I don't think you really, especially in 1 QB leagues, I don't know if Kirk Cousins is relevant. 2 QB leagues, I do think he's relevant as a high upside, low or high floor QB too. But all around, this just makes the Falcons so much more competitive. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I will say the length of the deal, obviously Kirk Cousins, he's 35 years old, but the length of the deal, it's a 4-year, $180 million contract. That is not chump change, Marcus.
No.
And that is a long extended deal. So I do think actually, I've been of the belief that Kirk Cousins is just generally kind of underrated in Dynasty, even despite that injury here in the last season. QB 21 in the most recent batch of Dynasty Startup ADP, going behind guys like Tua, who I think have a much lower floor, especially in fantasy, and a lower ceiling, if I'm being honest.
Yep.
Even despite the weaponry, I'll take, Kirk Cousins, and I would love to get Kirk Cousins plus something and trade away a guy like Tua or a Justin Fields who might not even have a starting job this season. Like I think Kirk Cousins generally undervalued, and especially so if he's going to be throwing to this talented group of skill position players, and the Falcons made that long-term investment in him.
Kirk Cousins wasn't the only corny quarterback to move this offseason. We also had Russell Wilson signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers late on Sunday night. Kate, as our resident Steeler fan slash blogger slash expert, what are your thoughts on Russell Wilson going to the Steelers?
I don't have a ton of thoughts in terms of his fantasy value. I think what you see from Russell Wilson, probably what you're going to get, although QB 28, I think is intriguing. If you need a 1-year loaner in a super flex league, I think he's a really fine QB2
But is he going to start over Kenny Pickett?
He's absolutely going to start over Kenny Pickett.
Of course
Like, let's be real, Marcus. You do not sign a former Super Bowl winning quarterback who I took a team friendly deal. Like he obviously could have. He was trying to get some extension laden deal where he could make more money and have options down the road. Like it wasn't going to happen. So he took the veteran minimum and signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, really stuck it to the Denver Broncos, who, by the way, the Steelers are going to play this year. That's going to be the game of the week to watch. But like, I think generally speaking, schematically, I look at Russell Wilson, I look at his efficiency under play action. I look at the type of offense that Arthur Smith is looking to execute. They have the run game to support a lot of these things that I think can bring Russell Wilson some greater efficiency. I mean, we've seen a lot of stats out there. Like the Broncos really kind of handcuffed Russell Wilson last year in terms of forcing that ball down the field. Like they didn't give him a ton of options there, but I do think that steady run game, the ability to run play action at a frequent rate, I think that's going to open things up down the field immensely. And I mean, Marcus, for as much as he's been like dinking and dunking, ranked top 10 in, I believe in total pass attempts of 20 plus air yards last year, like he still has an arm. And
He
I
does.
think
It's
now
still
that we're
attached to his
seeing
body.
it's still attached to his body. And I do think like he looked healthier last year. I think a big part of, some of the decline we've seen in his overall mobility definitely has partially been health. But last year we saw an increased willingness to scramble after kind of getting over, like he had a hamstring injury, a knee injury in the years prior. I do think that we've seen some of that resolve a little bit in his most recent season. I'm pretty excited for it. And again, at QB 28 in dynasty startup drafts, I think that's a really reasonable price. You're not going to be investing in Russell Wilson long term. Obviously, his future very much up in the air. It's a 1-year deal. It's a veteran minimum. But I do think that there is no feasible earth where the Steelers would have brought in Russell Wilson to quote unquote actually compete with Kenny Pickett. Maybe they gave him a wink, wink, nod, nod. He's their starter. No questions.
And for me, the only player that really impacts their dynasty value is George Pickens. I think you're going to see George Pickens get more shots down the field. Russell Wilson is just a much more accurate deep ball passer than Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph or Mitchell Trubisky. We saw Cortland Sutton score a lot of touchdowns last year. I would expect George Pickens to get more opportunities in the red zone. I think this really hurts Deontay Johnson. If Johnson even remains on the team, we've heard some whispers about a trade request there as well. And then Pat Freiermuth, I think this is a decline for Pat Freiermuth. We know Russell Wilson historically does not like to throw the ball over the middle of the field. We'll see what that looks like in Arthur Smith's offense. But for me, it's George Pickens is the biggest winner here with the Russell Wilson signing. Do you agree?
100%. Absolutely. And I think this is probably a good time to maybe trade for George Pickens, because I do think the general sentiment regarding Russell Wilson and this narrative that, like, slow averaged up the target, etc. People are going to paint that in a way that does not favor George Pickens. But I do think that, like, when you watch the tape, I think he has a pretty nice deep ball, and the shots down the field will be there, and that's 100% going to be the game that George Pickens plays as well as anybody.
Okay, we had a lot of movement at the running back position today,
Whew.
including several all-pro players coming off the board. We will discuss who gained the most value on Monday next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, Kate, let's talk about the running back market because it was wild in the first hour of free agency. Which player do you think gained the most value on Monday?
I mean, let's just talk about all the landing spots. So we got some goodies. We got Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, DeAndre Swift to the Bears, Tony Pollard to the Titans, which I did not expect. I'm going to be totally and completely honest there. And Josh Jacobs to the Packers. In a corresponding move, we learned that the Packers will be releasing Aaron Jones. So he's about to hit the free agent market. Not entirely a surprise. He was owed a lot of money this season. So not overly surprised there. But I think overall, I have to look at DeAndre Swift as probably the biggest winner. And I think that's probably going to be a little controversial because Saquon Barkley to the Eagles is an outstanding fit and I think a good one for real football. But Marcus, I don't know, with the tush push having not been banned, how many touchdowns do you think Saquon Barkley will reasonably score? And would he get enough passing volume in that offense to maintain that? I don't know. But DeAndre Swift going to the Bears and, obviously a little bit of a crowded room there with Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert in the final year of his deal with the team. But overall, you look at the potential upswing in the Bears offense, I think there could be some points to be scored. The Bears gonna probably have Caleb Williams there. He's mobile enough to give you that sort of dual threat action. I'm kind of liking DeAndre Swift here, and he doesn't even have a ton of miles on the tires. Like, I think this could be the start of something special.
Yeah, I want to start with Saquon because that's the one that is the most interesting to me. I think if this was the same offense that the Eagles had last year, I might actually be a little bit lower on Saquon because of all the things you mentioned. Like, they just love to run the tush push when they get inside the 3-yard line. But with Kellen Moore now running the play, or calling the plays on offense, no Jason Kelce, who retired. We saw during Kellen Moore's time with the Cowboys, they were like number one in the NFL running back touches inside the 5-yard line. Maybe we just see Saquon get a lot more of those opportunities. I think his efficiency is going to go way up. I also think there's part of this, Kate, where the Eagles have paid him so much money that maybe they're going to have to give him more. Yeah, they're going to use him, right? There's no reason at this point to try to save him for the next contract or whatever. Like, you're going to be giving him 18, 19, 20 touches a game. So I kind of think Saquon gained the most value. But I want to mention Josh Jacobs because this one is fascinating to me. You're going to Green Bay on an offense that was already pretty good down the stretch.
Yeah.
No Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon is a free agent. Josh Jacobs led the NFL in rushing yards in 2022 and yards from scrimmage. He's a fantastic receiver. and he got a long-term deal. I kind of wonder, like, is Josh Jacobs just now criminally underrated as a dynasty asset?
I think what you look at for Josh Jacobs, and I'm actually going to do the same here for Saquon Barkley. Like my tiebreaker here between the two, when we're trying to decide who is the biggest winner, like I'm going with DeAndre Swift for the touch volume, especially because we're talking dynasty. Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs both have a lot of miles on the tires, Marcus. Like Saquon Barkley ranks 10th among active running backs in terms of total touches throughout the longevity of his career. Josh Jacobs ranks 9th, even despite the fact he just turned 26. Josh Jacobs did, but I care a lot less about age necessarily than I do about the volume of touches. So that's why I'm going to give the edge to DeAndre Swift here. But I actually think all of these guys landed in situations where they're pretty much a lock for 250 touches, probably bare minimum, barring any really unexpected news.
Yeah. Is there any running backs that lost value for you, Kate? I mean, I'm kind of setting you up to talk about a certain somebody in Tennessee.
What is this where you're going to talk to me about Tajay Spears and all of the hope and glory that I thought we were headed for here with Tajay Spears? I mean, I'm personally heartbroken, Marcus. I'm very heartbroken. This was a 3rd round pick that I thought had a lot of steam going into the season. I mean, had a fantastic year. And we talked about him not too long ago. I think this was like a couple weeks ago about how efficient a season he had. Obviously, like Tony Pollard, I think is kind of an interesting fit, especially considering like he can play out of the slot. And I kind of thought like the receiving type back role was pretty well managed by Tajay Spears. But is there any chance that like even despite the inefficiencies, like is there concerns about long-term health, or it's an interesting move because I didn't see running back is their greatest need heading into 2024.
No.
But then again, you look at Tony Pollard and you think like, okay, he was best suited in a complementary role. Is there a chance that he's there to complement Tajay
No,
Spears, or am I
no, not
delusional?
not with that deal, right? I think one of the reasons that Brian Callahan brought in Tony Pollard is Pollard's gotten really good at pass blocking. And I know that's not a reason why you give a running back a lot of money, but it is something to check off, right? And in this offense that with an offensive line that's not very good, that needs a lot of upgrades, I think you want a running back that you feel really comfortable can pick up blitzes and it's going to know where to line up and it's going to help a young rookie quarterback. I think we see Tajay Spears go into the role that like Tony Pollard was early in his career, the change of pace guy that comes in that gets 8 to 10 touches a game. But I think our hope that Tajay Spears was going to be like the clear cut running back one, it's just not going to happen. It's really, really frustrating.
Way to ruin my day, Marcus.
I know. I apologize, but it's you and I were very bullish on Tajay Spears, and maybe we still can be. Maybe he just proves to be a better fit in this offense than what Tony Pollard is. And listen, it's not completely uncommon. We saw last year Miles Sanders get a big deal from the Panthers, and it was Chuba Hubbard that ended up outproducing him all season. So let's wait and see a little bit, but I do think you're going to see a pretty massive drop in Tajay Spears' dynasty value over the next month or so.
Who, Marcus, by the way, I don't know if you checked the batch of Dynasty ADP before the show. In February, Tajay Spears was drafted on average as the overall RB14. RB14. Ouch.
Yeah. Ouch. Hopefully you're not one of those teams that dropped him that high. All right, okay, let's talk about some wide receiver news. We didn't get a lot of movement so far on Monday, but there was one really interesting signing that I want to dive into. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That is $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, or you can even just pick who's going to win it all. Imagine the payout if you're actually able to predict who wins the national championship. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, we're going to continue with some free agency news over the rest of the week. We've got our draft profiles that are going on. We're going to talk about Jaden Daniels either Tuesday or Wednesday, just depending on the rest of the free agent news. But I do want to talk, Kate, about Gabe Davis getting the bag from Jacksonville. One of the more shocking moves that we saw on Monday. What are your thoughts?
Marcus, I'm sorry, like, what are the Jaguars doing? This was not the signing I expected. Jaguars signed Gabe Davis to a 3-year, $39 million contract. I am pretty shocked, to be totally honest. I do think that, like, relatively speaking, looking at the market for the wide receiver position, not a terrible deal. I mean, a lot of these sort of wide receiver two players like Cortland Sutton making $15 million a year. Michael Gallup, 11.5 million a year. Like,
thanks for
I
rubbing
think
that
from a
one in.
market standpoint, it's not the worst deal. But I will say he's a very interesting fit because, he is that down the field threat. You have Christian Kirk, who I think is a massive winner in this circumstance. Like, Gabe Davis, not as much of a threat on every single down to me as Calvin Ridley was. Now, who does that favor in this offense? It's going to favor Evan Ingram. It's going to favor Christian Kirk. I think two really solid winners. But Christian Kirk in particular, Marcus, I'm looking at that value in terms of dynasty startup. And I don't know that, like, we can really discount the value. He's at wide receiver 39 right now. 27 years old. I mean, what am I missing with Christian Kirk? Because I think this Gabe Davis just sets Christian Kirk top 24 season in stone. Like, you can set it and forget it at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. To be honest, I think the Gabe Davis move signals a couple things. Number one, they're going to want Christian Kirk to play in the slot, and adding an outside receiver like Gabe Davis, who has some size, will do that, right? Awesome. I think this also helps Trevor Lawrence. Gabe Davis is not the most reliable receiver, but he does make big plays down the field, and he can be a red zone weapon.
You have to account for.
Yeah, I don't think Gabe Davis has any fantasy value to me or any dynasty value. He's not somebody that you should be targeting, but I do think he helps out Christian Kirk, and I do think he helps out Trevor Lawrence. So for that reason, I like this for Jacksonville. And to be honest, he's not a better player than Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is the better receiver. But I do wonder if Gabe Davis is a better fit in a Doug Peterson offense. He's just a much better blocker. He's more physically imposing. He can win in the red zone. He can win with some size. I think they overpaid him a little bit. I don't know if he's worth that contract, but I do think this does make Jacksonville a little bit better on offense.
Yeah, and I do think also, for what this move is, I think we have a pretty good sort of idea of the roles. You have Zay Jones, who's on the final year of his contract with the team. He's going to play the outside speedster role when healthy. You have Gabe Davis, who obviously going to pose a big threat down the field, albeit more of a physical threat and less of a speed threat. Then you have Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk working over the middle of the field. Like, I think we have a pretty good picture of kind of how they're going to orchestrate this offense, which I'm going to be honest, that peace of mind, it feels good. It's so nice because there's a lot of moves that, sometimes when we bring in these free agent signings, there's not always a clear fit. But I think Davis's fit in particular is clear. Another, obviously awesome piece of news in terms of fit. We have Mike Evans staying with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we have Michael Pittman, who finally came to terms on a long-term deal with the Indianapolis Colts. And I got to be honest, Marcus, like, when I'm looking at landing spot for both of these guys, I kept going back to the fact that I want them to stay right where they are. Yeah. And we get that news.
The most exciting one for me is the Michael Pittman one because I didn't really want Michael Pittman going into a different offense. I thought he always made sense in a Shane Steichen offense. We'll see what Anthony Richardson looks like in year 2, but I love the fact that Michael Pittman got locked back up with the Colts. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Um, Love it. I was very happy with the wide receiver moves and lack of moves that we got on Monday.
Yeah, I feel like we, outside of the running back shuffle, we got a lot of news that was not all that necessarily surprising, but I think all in all, like this was just a good day for fantasy managers, a overall good day for dynasty managers in particular, unless you're like me and have way too many shares of Tajay Spears. I think we're on a good track. And there's still a number of names left, on the market to watch. Baker Mayfield obviously returning to the Buccaneers, but there's still plenty of action to be had that could
We just
impact our dynasty roster.
we just
So,
got Devin Singletary to the Giants. Just got announced.
hey, that might be the most underwhelming signing
Hey, maybe free
of the
Damian
show.
Pierce. That's all I got to say.
You heard it here first, folks.
I wonder, just spitballing. I wonder now if Devin Singletary left. I wonder if that opens the door for like Derrick Henry to go to Houston, play in that offense. We'll see. We'll see. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. She's loving the Russell Wilson signing. Go check out all of her tweets, all of her articles at Behind the Steel Curtain. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.